This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hello everyone, I'm Hone, and it is Wednesday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. In this MTG Top 10, I'm looking at Saprolings. Saprolings are kind of unique in that there is not actually a single creature card in the game with the Saproling creature type, apart from changelings and the like, obviously. However, Saprolings are a common type of creature token in green, and that's been true since at least Fallen Empires, a set printed back in 1994. While there are a few other creature tokens out there who have creature types that don't appear on any actual creature cards, Saproling is by far the most plentiful of that group. To be eligible for this list, a card had to be able to make a Saproling creature token. In all, there are 78 cards that were eligible, and in this list, I'm going to look at the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. Pro Tour, Players Tour, and Mythic Championship top 8s, as well as Legacy and Vintage Championship top 8s are worth 2 points, and a Grand Prix or Magic Fest top 8 is worth 1 point. At number 10, it's Saproling Cluster. This is a quirky little enchantment, mostly because any player can use its activated ability, which lets you discard a card and create a Saproling token. Mask's Block had several cards that allowed any player to use activated abilities, which is kind of a unique thing now. Anyhow, being able to throw excess lands away or other cards you need to make a Saproling is nice, but not so nice when anyone can do it. However, the cluster gained all of its points in a standard combo deck that didn't really care whether the opponent could use it or not, because it could combo off and win the game anyway. The deck, called Chimera, would tutor up Saproling Cluster along with Fecundity and Ashnod's Altar. With all three of those cards in play, you could discard a card to make a Saproling, and then sacrifice that creature to Ashnod's Altar, which gave you the 2 mana and drew you another card. With every sacrifice, you would net 1 mana, so you could draw through your whole deck and produce a ton of mana, and then use something like Whetstone to mill the opponent out immediately. The deck was short-lived, but it was a pretty sweet combo while it was around. At number 9, I have Saproling Migration, the newest card by far to make this list. 2 mana to make 2 1/1 tokens is something that sees play sometimes anyway, even if that's all a card does. Saproling Migration comes with this sweet additional upside of Kicker, which means if you draw it late and you have a mana lying around, you can get more Saproling tokens. Saproling Migration gained all of its points in Standard, unsurprisingly, in a green-white tokens deck. Token decks generally have lots of ways to make tokens, as well as ways to take advantage of going wide, and Migration was a nice way of doing the latter for that deck. At number 8, it is Aura Mutation, a powerful way to destroy enchantments. It not only lets you deal with the problem enchantment, it gives you some Saproling tokens when you do it. That's usually enough that casting this will be a 2-for-1. Adding to the board while taking away from your opponents is just one of the best things you can do in this game. Aura Mutation might seem like it's a sideboard card, and in most formats it probably would have been, but in the Standard of the year 2000, there were lots of powerful enchantments running around, like Fires of Yavimaya, Rising Waters, Parallax Wave, and Saproling Burst, which we'll be getting to further up this list. As a result of the fact that basically every deck in that format had main board enchantments, Aura Mutation was actually played in the main board at Pro Tour Chicago in 2000, where it gained all of its points. At number 7, it is RITH, the Awakener. RITH is a powerful dragon who is part of a cycle of 3-colored dragons from Invasion. All of these dragons cost 6 mana for a 6/6 flyer, and have an ability that triggers when the dragon does combat damage to an opponent, and the ability is based on the color of cards in one zone or another. Invasion Block was all about card color. In the case of RITH, you get a Saproling token for every permanent that shares the color you name. This means, by the way, that he can basically double your Saprolings every turn, because you can just keep naming green. That's a nice way to make sure that RITH leaves something behind, even if your opponent can find an answer to it. Like Aura Mutation, RITH actually gained all of its points at Pro Tour Chicago in 2000, which was a standard Pro Tour. It was at the top of the curve for a couple of the mid-range decks at the event. At number 6, it's Seed Spark. The Selesnya Guild on Ravnica really loves Saprolings, and this is the first of a few Selesnya cards to make the list. Seed Spark has some similarities with Aura Mutation. Both let you blow up an enchantment and get some Saprolings out of the deal. In the case of Seed Spark, though, you can also blow up artifacts with it, and the number of Saprolings is fixed. You get 2 regardless of the converted mana cost, of the permanent you destroy. You also have to pay green mana to cast it, but that was a given in the Selesnya decks it was played in back in the Standard of 2005. Much like Aura Mutation, Seed Spark was also played in the main deck because the format had plenty of good targets for it. This included powerful artifacts like Umezawa's Jite and powerful enchantments like Glare of Subdual. Seed Spark never put up any points after Worlds in 2005, but it did have a good moment in the sun. At number 5, it is Vitu-Ghazi, the City Tree. This is the headquarters of the Selesnya Guild, and it lets you make Saproling tokens. I really love utility lands, and having a land like this one is great. Early on, it produces the mana you need, like any land, but in the late game, it can help you actually impact the board itself by making a Saproling token every turn if you have the mana lying around. In Standard, Vitu-Ghazi was an important enough card that there was a deck partly named after it, and that is Ghazi Glare, which looks to use Glare of Subdual and various token-making cards, like Vitu-Ghazi, to lock down the opponent's board every turn. It also picked up 2 points in Ravnica Block Constructed in an Abzan mid-range deck. At number 4, it's Selesnya Guildmage. This Guildmage is great because it can not only crank out Saproling tokens, but it can also pump your whole board, something that fits quite well in a deck interested in making lots of Saprolings in the first place. The Guildmage, like Vitu-Ghazi, was played in Ghazi Glare decks in Standard, where it provided an extra body on its own for the Glare, and could crank out more when you had the mana. It also had one Pro Tour top 8 in block, where it was played in a Zoo aggro deck. At number 3, it's SAPROLING BURST. In terms of Saprolings, this is a pretty weird card, mostly because it doesn't create the 1/1 Saproling token that literally every other card that makes Saprolings creates. Instead, it makes a unique Saproling token that has power and toughness equal to the number of fading counters on SAPROLING Burst. Fading is a mechanic that makes it so that your permanent slowly decays. It loses a fading counter every turn, and when that last fading counter leaves, the card is sacrificed. Saproling Burst is part of a cycle of rare enchantments that do some wacky things with fading, and in this case, you can remove a fade counter whenever, just to create a Saproling token. You can use the burst to make one big beefy token, or you can make an army of them if that means it will win you the game. In Standard, it was played in Fires of Yavimaya decks. In general, these decks ran lots of stuff with fading, because it decreased the downside of the mechanic on creatures. This is because it lets your creature attack right away, allowing you to get more value out of your fading cards than normal. And this included the burst, which you could use to make a huge Saproling who could attack right away, or a bunch that could attack right away as well. At number 2, it is Verdant Force. This beefy creature is an iconic one from Magic's early history, and it has a powerful ability that makes you a Saproling every upkeep. We don't see every upkeep very often these days, so it's easy to overlook, but it's important because it means that Verdant Force makes a Saproling even on your opponent's upkeep. That means that Verdant Force can quickly assemble an army for you, one that he will leave behind even if your opponent can take him down. Over the years, Verdant Force was mostly played in Reanimator decks, as for a while, he was just one of the best creatures around when looking at his power level in a vacuum. Cheating him into play early in the game was nuts, and not easy for opponents to deal with. It was reanimated in Standard recurring survival decks and in extended mono-black Reanimator decks. While it has received reprints recently, including in Dominaria, that have made it legal in more formats, the Force doesn't measure up that well these days for reanimation decks, which can reanimate much scarier creatures like Gristlebrand and the like. As a result, the Force doesn't have any points since 2003. And at number 1, it is Sprouting THRINAX. This guy is impressively efficient as a 3-mana 3/3 that leaves behind 3 1/1 Saproling creature tokens when he dies. Sure, he might be somewhat challenging to cast, but it wasn't a hurdle for the Jund decks he was played in while in Standard. Jund decks are often about getting 2-for-1s, and THRINAX can definitely get you there. Sprouting THRINAX hasn't gained any points since rotating out of Standard, but I wouldn't completely rule him out going forward. Well, that does it for this MTG Top 10. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe, and if you haven't already seen the over 250 other MTG Top 10s I've already done, you should see the playlist on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.